In 1986, Nintendo was kicking ass with its Famicom Nintendo Entertainment System in both USA and Japan. Thanks to that, the industry had been revived after the 1983 video game crash. Nintendo was selling millions thanks to the platforming Super Mario Bros. And the adventuring Legend of Zelda. What came next, though, was a space-based action game developed by Gunpei Yokoi and Nintendo's Research and Development 1. That game was Metroid. Released on August 6, 1986 in the Famicom Disk System in Japan, and a year later on NES in North America, saw the game produced by legendary Nintendo developer the late Gunpei Yokoi. The title screen as well as the manual will explain the backstory. You are playing famous space bounty hunter Samus Aran, whose mission is to land on Zebes in the defeat a race known as the Space Pirates, who are working on cloning an evil life-sucking creature known as the Metroids, and are led by a creature known simply as Mother Brain. You start the game playing as Samus Aran, obviously, who can shoot from a missile cannon on his arm. Shut up! As well as that, Samus also has the peculiar ability that enabled him to roll up into a little ball and access small areas. Huh. Metroid would feature platforming like in Super Mario Bros. And additional weapons like in Legend of Zelda, but both aspects were greatly enhanced. Metroid was one of the first games to feature a direction that had never been seen before in a 2D side-scroller up until then: walking left. Metroid was one of the first games where you didn't just push right but instead explored. As well as that, the upgraded weapons, unlike in other games, were permanent fixtures. These weapons included morph ball bombs, missiles, and ice beams. Due to its giant maze-like structure, Metroid was one of those games you couldn't finish in one sitting. The original FDS version had the ability to save your progress like in Legend of Zelda. However, unlike Legend of Zelda, that ability wouldn't be passed over onto the American NES version, instead implementing a sort of save password feature. The reason behind this is that unlike other Famicom disc games like Zelda, Metroid didn't sell well in Japan. Fortunately, however, sales in the US were much more forgiving for Metroid. Continuing the list of firsts, this is one of the first games that would feature alternate endings, this case in how quick it took you to complete the game. Beating the game in 1 hour would give you a twist that not even that crackpot M. Night Shyamalan could see coming. Samus was a babe. A hot, 8-bit bikini-wearing babe. And I think everyone had one of two reactions.
Is that true? It's impossible!
Or
oh fuck, the keyboard.
the drive to complete the game as fast as possible gave birth to a concept known as speedrunning, a concept where someone finishes the game with the fastest time and or most items collected. The game also featured many hidden passwords which featured interesting Easter eggs. The most infamous one is the Justin Bailey code. Inputting this lets you play as a skimpy dress wearing green haired Samus. Me like. While Mario got 2 NES sequels and Link got 1, sadly due to the lackluster sales in Japan, Samus returning to the NES didn't seem likely. It wouldn't be until 1989 when R&D1, still led by Gunpei Yokoi, made their next big invention, the Game Boy, and 2 years later, Samus returned in the cleverly titled Metroid 2 Return of Samus. Whatever, let's just play the game. Released on April 26, 1991 in the US and January 2nd the next year in Japan, so the first and only Metroid game developed by Intelligent Systems, not to mention the only game not involving the other man behind the franchise, Yoshio Sakamoto, who was working on a little something else at the time. Like any Game Boy game, naturally the graphics have to be slimmed down to fit the portable screen, but the gameplay and controls were as fine as they were on the NES. The game would see Samus landing on the planet s1e32 with a mission to eradicate the Metroids. In the original game, when Samus retrieved the fireproof Varia suit, her armor turned purple. But of course, due to the monochromatic nature of the handheld, she instead was given giant circular shoulder pads on her armor to tell the difference. A change that becomes standard to our heroine in future games. Unlike the previous game, Metroid 2 featured a much more linear gameplay. During her journey into the depths of s1e32, Samus battled 5 forms of Metroids, from regular to Zeta. However, the game ended with a fight with a Metroid Queen. Once vanquished, Samus came across something surprising. A freshly hatched Metroid, who mistook the space heroine for its mother. Instead of destroying it, Samus took it with her, and once again, if you finish fast enough, Samus showed once again how beautiful she is. Huh? Oh, right. Like the NES, Samus wouldn't make a return to the Game Boy, at least in its current iteration. What came next, though, isn't just considered one of the best Metroid games. It's considered one of the best games of all time. Again, it can only be described as super. Released in 1993, 3 years after the SNES release, was the third Metroid game entitled Super Metroid, and at release was the biggest SNES cartridge available on the market at a whopping 24 megs. Believe me, in 1993, that was big. If they saw something like this, they'd shit their pants. In fact, the game was so big it almost got cancelled 3 times. Through the use of an inner monologue, Samus recaps Metroid 1 and 2, telling us that she gave the Metroid hatchling from Metroid 2 to scientists to better help the galaxy. Tragically, as soon as Samus leaves the research station, it is attacked by the space pirates General Ridley, and takes the baby Metroid to the nearby planet of Zebes, where the franchise started. From the moment you entered the depths of Zebes, you realize this isn't just a cheap remake. Oh, no. This is Metroid on goddamn steroids. The game featured many amazing locales, from the lava-intense Snowfar to the refreshing water-filled Meridia to a fucking actual haunted spaceship. Awesome! Controls were incredibly tight. You were now finally able to shoot in 8 directions, making quick action against those fucking hanging things. But there's one thing about Super Metroid that's always pissed me off, and that's the wall jumping. I, for the life of me, can't get it right, and neither can other people. Right, Storm?
Okay, Samus. We're gonna wall jump. Don't make this complicated.
What a nice guy. The game's atmosphere was isolated and desolate. No game up until then, even the previous Metroid games, often experienced like Super Metroid. Everything from the different areas to the amazing music done by Kenji Yamamoto and Minako Hamano. Super Metroid would also feature one of the most in-depth and shocking endings on the SNES. Weakened by Mother Brain and staring death in the eyes, Samus was saved by the baby Metroid, now fully grown, who sacrificed himself for his mother. Super Metroid was met with universal acclaim, and despite releasing in 1994 at the tail end of the SNES life cycle, it sold 1.5 million copies. After seeing what the Metroid franchise could offer, gamers couldn't wait to see what happened next. Too bad it would take 7 years for that to happen. For the good part of a decade, Samus was MIA, and besides the original Smash Brothers, she did not even appear on the N64. In an interview, Miyamoto was once noted as saying that during the entire 64 era, the development team looked into making a new Metroid title, but couldn't come up with any concrete ideas at the time. After years of waiting, the bounty hunter finally returned on the new Game Boy Advance in Metroid Fusion. As of right now, this is the last game in the Metroid timeline, and no, I don't mean apparent or speculated. See, unlike other franchises, Metroid actually has a confirmed timeline. How much ham have I got already? Ah! Perfect! The game begins with Samus leading an expedition to s1e32. While there, she comes across an unknown parasite that latched onto her and attacked her. Samus was near death due to the parasite, but was saved after scientists removed parts of her damaged suit and administered a vaccine taken from the Metroid hatchling that saved her life once before. Because of this, Samus acquired Metroid-like powers. Afterwards, Samus is sent to investigate a nearby space station which she discovers is swarming with the same virus that almost killed her. The virus, now known as the X-Parasite, has the ability to absorb and replicate the host before killing it. Samus, with her new Metroid-like abilities, is able to absorb these X-Parasites herself, which replaces health and ammo. Unfortunately, the X-Parasite was able to, thanks to Samus's old armor, make a complete replication of Samus's power armor. Throughout the game, you come across your clone, dubbed SAX, and to hide due to her being at full power. Being on the 32-bit GBA, the game is as close to a Super Metroid sequel we would see for a good part of a decade. My only real problem with Fusion is that sometimes it's terribly unbalanced. You have enemies with such cheap moves that take away 2 entire units of energy. Metroid Fusion was much more linear compared to previous titles, but by that time people were so starved for Metroid, most didn't care, and besides, what was offered was still an amazing game. But, on the same day as Fusion, we saw another Metroid game that would change the entire landscape of the franchise. In 1998, Nintendo, alongside the head of defunct developing studio Iguana Entertainment, Jeff Spangberg, formed Retro Studios in Austin, Texas, along with the task of developing games for the GameCube. But from then to 2000, nothing came to be, until Miyamoto suggested the Metroid license. What came out of that was Metroid Prime. Original beta trailer showed Samus being controlled from the third person, but once again, after a suggestion from Miyamoto, the game was brought into first-person perspective. Like most first-party IPs during the GameCube era, it was made with initial concern when it was discovered it would be a first-person Metroid game. Those concerns were met head-on when Prime was released the same day as Fusion. Instead of opting for a dual-analog gaming system, Retro used a mechanic which I believe is a million times better than that. Lock-on combat. Using the L button to lock on and the A button to shoot, Samus could strafe by delivering epic power to her enemies. Everything fans loved about Metroid was reborn to glorious 3D. Everything from the item hunting to the boss battles to the sense of isolation was all present, and people loved it. As well as old favorites, the game featured many new and upgraded mechanics, including a map system that also displayed where you needed to go. While the system was also present in Fusion, Prime was the one that defined it properly. The story goes that Samus receives a distress call from a research station circling planet Talon 4 and finds it riddled with space pirates who appear to be experimenting with a substance known as Phazon and does battle with a parasite queen before escaping the ship. Not before she has a terrible accident and loses all her power-ups. During her escape, she encounters her old nemesis Ridley and follows him to Talon 4, where it's discovered that the space pirates have been experimenting with Metroids and Phazon. Like in Super Metroid, the game featured many different settings from lava to snow to underwater, and Samus's visor accommodated and adapted to each locale, having it freeze up, have yaw on it, and even if it was angled just right, get a glimpse of our beauty's face. While playing, you never notice a single now loading screen, using instead to have elevators and slow loading doors to hide the game's quick load times. You would also see a variety of different visors present in the Prime games, with the most common one being the scan visor, which allowed you to activate platforms to get information about your surroundings. Unlike in previous games, Prime focused more on items collected than time of completion. The game was still well received and is still considered one of the best games in the GameCube. Not only is it the second best-selling GameCube game of all time, it's also the best-selling Metroid game of all time. However, fans would soon realize that Prime wasn't just a subtitle, it was a series all of its own. Next year, however, we got a Metroid Story we never heard of. In comic form. Released between 2003 and 2004 were Metroid mangas published by magazine Z, documenting Samus's young life. The story focuses on Samus and her parents' life on colony K2L, who were there for the mining of the element alfluorite. Hungry for it, the space pirate General Ridley led his crew to attack the mining colony for the precious energy source, killing everyone, including Samus's parents. The only one to survive was 3-year-old Samus Aran. It was there she was rescued by the ancient alien race the Chozo, who brought her back to their colony and infused their DNA with her so she could stay in the harsh environment of their planet. The Chozo trained Samus for her to become a warrior, giving her her iconic power suit in the process. After years of training, she set out on her own to become an intergalactic bounty hunter. It's also revealed that the Chozo were the ones who created the Metroids in the first place, originally designing them as a weapon against the X-Parasite on s1e32, up until the Space Pirates got their hands on them. The 2-issue manga is available for free online. In 2004, R&D 1 remade the original Metroid for the GBA under the title Metroid Zero Mission. This wasn't just a simple graphic upgrade, everything was improved, even the story. After defeating Mother Brain and escaping to your ship, you and Samus got a sense of relaxation as Samus takes off her power armor, revealing...
The Zero suit.
Yeah, turns out she gets ambushed and crashes near a space pirate's mothership. Lacking her armor and only having an emergency pistol, Samus has to channel Solid Snake and avoid detection from the space pirates as she delves into the Chozo ruins and acquires a new spacesuit, before escaping on a spaceship and leaving the planet. Overall, a pretty good remake. But next year, Retro Studios came back bigger and better than ever, with their sequel to Prime, Prime 2, Echoes. Prime 2 will be set on the planet Aethia, with Samus responding to a distress call from a vanished team of space marines. Unfortunately, her ship gets damaged. However, Samus soon encounters Dark Samus, which came to be at the perfect ending of Metroid Prime 1. It's soon discovered that thanks to the friendly inhabitants of Aethia, the Luminoff, who inform her that Aether is split into 2 worlds, the Light and the Dark World, which are inhabited by the Ing. Who take all her weapons? Seriously, you'd think she'd have a backup of her power-ups in her ship the amount of time she loses them. Samus is required to travel between the Light and Dark Aethia to complete the game, and like in other Light-Dark games, what happens in one world affects the other. The game would feature new weapons including a Light and Dark cannon. Killing an enemy with one of these 2 weapons would give you the ammo for the other one. At the end, Samus faces and defeats the Emperor Ing, and as she runs to escape the crumbling Dark Aether in an oh-so-familiar self-destruct countdown, Samus has one last fight with Dark Samus before flying to safety. Prime 2 took the original Prime and built upon it, and it definitely did work. While Prime 2 wouldn't sell as many as the original, it still was an amazing game. At E3 2004, Nintendo unveiled the revolutionary Nintendo DS for the first time. The only gameplay to be shown was a handheld Metroid Prime game. When the console was released later that year, the game came packed in as a demo. Unfortunately, Hunters wouldn't be released for 2 more years. But until then, we got a game that tied us over. Pinball! What? That's right, in 2005, developed by Fuse Games, came Metroid Prime Pinball. It's pinball. Based off Metroid Prime. It's okay. Next! But finally, in 2006, Metroid Prime Hunters finally released for the Nintendo DS, using the D-pad to move and the stylus to shoot. However, I own a 3DS, so using the slide pad is so much better. The story goes that the Galactic Federation receives a strange telepathic message involving something called the Ultimate Power, and sends Samus to investigate. However, she isn't alone, as 6 other bounty hunters from across the galaxy are sent to explore it themselves. Gameplay was challenging and the controls were easy to pick up and play. When it was released, Hunters was one of the best looking handheld games from Nintendo. It was revolutionary and pushed the DS to its full potential, and also brought something new to the table: multiplayer. While there was multiplayer in Echoes, it was local, and honestly it was clearly just packed in as an afterthought. But as for Hunters, it features some great handheld online multiplayer. At E3 2005, we got our first look at the upcoming Metroid Prime 3 for the then upcoming Nintendo Revolution. Initial reports said the game would be released as a launch title for the Wii in 2006. Sadly, that didn't happen, as Metroid Prime 3 wouldn't see release until August of that next year. And when the game finally came out, holy shit did it blow people away. Not only did we see actual fellow humans, but fellow bounty hunter friends. The final part of the Prime series would see Dark Samus attack you and your friends and infect you with Phazon. After being out for a month, Samus installed a Phazon suit that allows her to go into hyper mode and unleash hell on anything that gets in her way. However, all your friends who have had the same suits installed have gone to other planets and have since lost contact. Remind me how that usually works out again? Oh, right. This would also see the first time you would interact with the inside of your ship. Being an early Wii title, the concept of motion controls was still limitless. Here we see you using the Wiimote to control Samus' hands as you fly to different planets and bases, not mention flicking the nunchuck to use the grapple beam. However, Samus' Phazon suit corrupts and she becomes overloaded with Phazon, hence the title, and she is required to shoot out the excess Phazon before she succumbs to the corruption. It was clear Retro Studios wasn't like other developers who released the same basic game every single time, as Prime 3 blew everyone away with bigger worlds to explore, bigger action, as well as bringing your airship into the mess to rain hell down. Prime 3 is some of the best controls on the Wii, and in my opinion it's the perfect example of how to do an FPS properly on the Wii, unlike other examples I could mention. Prime 3 would sell 1.5 million copies and finish off an amazing trilogy. Speaking of which, in 2009 all 3 console Prime games were remade for the Wii and slapped into one disc. That would be known as Metroid Prime Trilogy. All I can say is the great Wii controls from Corruption are on the Wii makes of the original and Echoes, and if you can find a copy of this, it's worth the buy, and in all honesty, I believe the Wii controls are better than the GameCube controls. But about a month after that, it was announced at E3 2009 that Nintendo was going to be working with Team Ninja to make a brand new Metroid game called Other M. Now, you probably all know that I already reviewed this game, and if you haven't seen it already, here it is now. The Metroid series has seen a major rebirth since the GameCube era. The Metroid Prime trilogy was, in my opinion, the greatest console FPS series of all time. That's right, I'm saying that the Metroid Prime trilogy was better than the Halo trilogy. Or rather, trilogy, whatever. At E3 2009, a brand new Metroid game was announced right after they announced a fucking heart monitor. The game would be developed by Project M, which would be a collaboration between Nintendo and Team Ninja. That's right, that Team Ninja. And I just got an erection. Don't look at me like that. The game uses just the Wiimote. No nunchuck, no classic controller, just the Wiimote. The game starts off with an amazing opening sequence, recreating the spectacular ending to Super Metroid in glorious 480 SD. This time I'm glad I just got those component cables for my Wii. From there, we meet what was I doing again? Oh right, game. And it appears that's not my Wiimote in my hand anymore. The story goes that Samus receives a distress call from a place called a bottle ship and runs into a group of Galactic Federation soldiers, including her former commander, Anna Malkovich. Earlier in her life, Samus was a soldier in the Galactic Federation army under Adam's order before deciding to leave to become a bounty hunter.
I understood well that chances were slim that I would ever find anyone that understood me like Adam. And yet, when the time came, I still left his side. I was so young. Young and naive.
I don't even know why she left. They obviously did it. I mean, come on, it's painfully obvious. I may just need to really careful with that. Moving on. In all seriousness, Adam is like a father figure to Samus, hence her loyalty to him. The game is in 3D but controls like a 2D side-scroller. Once you get used to controlling with the D-pad, not the analog stick, you get used to it. Besides the basic jump, shoot, and morph 4 buttons, point the Wiimote at the screen and it turns to first-person sniper mode, a la Metroid Prime. Some people say the transition between first and third person using the way of the Wiimote is fiddly and immersive. I say that, you just don't play enough Wii games. Once you get used to it, the sniper mode is actually quite simple and feels like second nature after a while. But with that said, I still wouldn't mind a classic controller option. Unlike in other Metroid games where health and ammo are left behind from downed enemies, this game has a different mechanic. Instead, you hold the Wiimote up and press A. This makes Samus concentrate and allow you to recharge her missiles and regain a certain amount of health when it's gone down to a certain point. One part that really annoys me. Sometimes Samus stops and you're required to find something in first person, and you can't continue until you find whatever the hell you're supposed to be looking for. This really drives down to something like a Where's Wally puzzle, only more tedious and annoying. I of course should now bring up one of the major parts of the game, that features voices, including one for Samus.
Not even a fragment. None of the baby remained on me. I knew it to be true, but still couldn't help looking at my palm for a sign.
What the fuck is she doing? Talking like it's her fucking live journal? Okay, I'll admit this probably wasn't the perfect voice for Samus, but should that really change how the game was played? That of course is the other major point of this game. Instead of finding upgrades for your suits scattered around the map, you have to wait until Adam, your acting commanding officer, authorizes it. People say this makes Samus look like a little girl and diminishes her character. Oh really? Does a little girl do this? Let the body hit the floor. 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 I think I know why all the people are pissed off about this game. Because it's the D word. You know. Different. Yeah, I know you Nintendo diehards hate difference. But really, is that such a bad thing? Remember when Metroid Prime was first announced, everyone got all pissy about how the fact that a first-person Metroid game would suck? Yeah, it certainly did suck. Ugh. The game will last you 10 to 12 hours, which pales in comparison to the 40+ hours I spent playing each of the 3 Prime games. However, you can play for much longer for others Metroid players just has to have 100% items collected. I should also mention after getting the ending credits, you unlock Theater Mode, which allows you to watch all the cutscenes together like a movie. Hey, as far as I'm concerned, this is probably the closest we will ever get to a Metroid movie. Before I wrap up this review though, I just want to bring up one little thing I noticed. Now, doesn't that remind you of something?
Snake! What happened? Snake! Snake!
So that was Metroid Other M. Is it the worst game of 2010? Hell no! Is it the worst Metroid game though? I don't know, I mean, it's very hard to compare against the excellence that was the Prime trilogy. But still, Other M is a really good game and I would love to see some more from Project M. So with that, I'm Enigma, and thank you all for watching. And to all the people who don't like my hair, go to hell. I gotta get a new VCR. And my opinions on it still stand. I liked the game. Yes, I'll agree the voice actor they got for Samus wasn't the best they could have got, but the gameplay was still really good. I feel the cutscenes and characterization of Samus has deterred attention from the gameplay, which isn't bad in the slightest. So, here we are. With the 3DS already out and the Wii U on its way, where does the future of Metroid lie? Will it see a return of Prime, or Project M come back for another game? All I can say is that since the beginning of the 21st century, Metroid has gone from a dormant franchise to being one of Nintendo's AAA properties. With a AAA property comes an urban legend. I give the story of Metroid Dread. In the June 2005 issue of Game Informer, it was reported that a DS 2D side-scroller underneath the name Metroid Dread was being developed. That was confirmed next year in the UK's official Nintendo magazine, listing the game with a 2006 release date. While no information could be released, an interesting tidbit would appear in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. Scanning one of the terminals at the Metroid processing plant would show you this message. Experiment status report update. Metroid Project Dread is nearing the final stages of completion. Yoshio Sakamoto has confirmed that at one time there was a Metroid Dread in progress, but has yet to mention any more information. As of now, it's unknown whether or not the project is still active. This year being Metroid's 25th anniversary, people are asking why isn't Nintendo celebrating Metroid's 25th birthday? Well, here's my theory. Because the original Metroid sold so badly in Japan and Link's already celebrating his this year, I think it's safe to say that Metroid will be having theirs next year, during the anniversary of its US release. But as for Metroid, whether there's trouble in the galaxy, wherever pirates may loom, you know Samus will be there to kick their asses, and then proceed to show hers. From me, to all of you, thank you for watching the Metroid story. See you again next time.